A coal yard worker in 1936 kept his pregnant wife alive through a 4-day ice storm using 6 cans of vegetable shortening and a piece of cotton string, and it cost him $1.32. That is not a folk tale. That is a documented fact. The power lines collapsed under the ice. The thermometer in the kitchen dropped to 41 degrees. He walked to his pantry, pulled down 6 cans of shortening, pushed a length of cotton wick into each one, and lit them in a ring on his cold iron stove. Those 6 flames burned bright enough to read by and threw enough heat to keep that kitchen above freezing for 4 straight nights, while the rest of his town ran out of candles and sat in the cold. Now think about where you are tonight. If the grid went down in the next hour, how long before you were sitting in the dark staring at a dying phone screen? 20 minutes? Maybe 30? And somewhere in a garage or a closet you have a $400 solar lantern that may or may not have remembered to charge itself. That worker's entire blackout kit cost $1.32. The record shows his setup produced more usable light for a longer duration than most of what a modern emergency preparedness catalog will sell you right now for $2,000. Tonight, I am going to count down 20 of the tricks he and people like him lived by. Some of them your grandparents used without thinking twice. Some of them a building inspector today would shut you down for. And a few of them, somebody worked very hard to make sure you would never hear again, because the day you forgot them, somebody else got rich. I am the 7th generation of my family on this ridge in eastern Kentucky. My people put roots here in the 1790s and never pulled them up. Most of what I'm about to share with you, my grandfather copied by lamplight into a leather journal and made me promise the old knowledge would not die when he did. This is me keeping that promise. 20 tricks tonight, counting down from 20 to 1. One of them involves a Nebraska family the Smithsonian spent 2 years documenting. One of them was illegal in 8 states until just a few years ago. And the one at number 3, I am saving until we are deep in, because that is the one they worked hardest to bury. Before we start, tap subscribe. Not for me, because we are dragging buried knowledge back into the light, and you are going to want to be here for the next one they would rather you never saw. The question tonight is not what did we lose. The question is who got paid the day we forgot it, and how do you take it back, starting right now. 20. The easiest one on this entire list, and also the one most people skip. Before the storm arrives, before the first gust hits, your great-grandmother filled the bathtub, every pot, every kettle, every galvanized bucket she owned, cold water right to the rim before the pump went silent. Municipal tap water in 1955 ran less than a penny for 50 gallons. A full standard tub holds around 40 gallons. That is roughly 4 cents of insurance against 3 days without a working toilet or a drop to drink. Compare that to bottled emergency water today at close to $2 a gallon. Nobody banned this one. Nobody passed a law against it. Utility companies just quietly stopped talking about it around the 1960s because a customer who prepares ahead is a customer who complains less and calls less. The relevant federal emergency agency still recommends exactly this: 1 gallon per person per day, stored before the outage hits. Same trick, 70 years later. Free, 4 minutes, 40 gallons, and nobody bothered to remind you. That one they simply stopped teaching. The next one they actively sold you an expensive replacement for. 19. Before refrigerators ran every kitchen, there was a north wall shelf. Butter, milk, eggs, firm cheese, sitting on a wooden plank mounted against the coldest exterior wall of the house, sometimes right next to a screened window. In February in Michigan or Ohio, that shelf held a steady 38 degrees, colder and more consistent than many early refrigerators. A first-generation electric refrigerator in 1930 ran about $280, which was roughly 3 months of wages for an average worker. The north wall shelf cost the price of a scrap of pine board, which was close to nothing. No law killed it. Appliance manufacturers killed it. They ran advertising campaigns starting in the late 1920s that made keeping food on an outside wall look like something only poor families did. Buy the machine or your neighbors will whisper. The relevant federal agriculture department still confirms it. Below 40 degrees, dairy holds safely. Your exterior kitchen wall in January is colder than that right now. A shelf.
That is the whole trick. 18. The winter clothesline, and not on the porch, inside.
Strung tight between two cabinet handles or two hooks above the stove or above a gas range with a pilot light burning. Your grandmother did Monday laundry, and by supper the shirts were dry, and the kitchen was 5 degrees warmer than it would have been otherwise. A modern electric dryer runs $30 to $50 a month on your power bill. The indoor clothesline runs exactly $0, and it hands you back a little warmth as a bonus. Nobody made indoor drying illegal. Appliance companies spent the 1950s convincing you a clothesline meant you could not afford a machine. The dryer manufacturers sold you the box. The power companies sold you the electricity to run it. The energy department still lists air drying as the single largest laundry energy saving a household can make. One string, free heat, free drying. That was the whole thing. 17. One lamp, one room. In a 1930s farmhouse kitchen with no power or power that had just quit, the whole family gathered under a single oil lamp hanging from a ceiling hook. The rest of the house stayed dark. Kerosene ran about 10 cents a gallon back then. One lamp burned 3 or 4 hours on a pint, less than a penny per evening for a family of 6. Nobody banned it. Appliance companies spent the 1950s convincing you a clothesline meant you could not afford a machine. The dryer manufacturer sold you the box. The power company sold you the electricity to run it. The energy department still lists air drying as the single largest laundry energy saving a household can make. One string, free heat, free drying. That was the whole thing. 16. When the pump quits, the toilet quits too, unless you know this. Pour a gallon of water hard and fast directly into the toilet bowl, not into the tank. The bowl. The siphon engages on its own. 1 gallon, 1 flush, no handle, no electricity, no plumber. The 40 gallons you stored in the tub in Trick 20 gives you 40 flushes for free. Nobody suppressed this. Plumbers stopped explaining it because a customer who can handle basics without calling is a customer who calls less. Every plumbing engineer will confirm it. Any standard siphon jet toilet responds to a bucket pour. Gravity. Free. Forever. Now here is where it stops being quaint. Every trick from this point forward, somebody is making serious money selling you the modern version of something your grandfather built with his hands for almost nothing. 15. The trick they now sell is a $2,000 climate-controlled appliance. Your grandfather built it with a shovel and a wooden crate. In the northeast corner of a basement where concrete meets packed earth, the temperature holds between 38 and 50 degrees year-round without any power at all. Pack a wooden crate with clean, dry sand. Bury your carrots, potatoes, turnips, beets, and apples in it. A 1934 Federal Agriculture Bulletin priced a working root storage setup at $10 to $20 in lumber. The modern equivalent from a specialty appliance retailer runs well over $2,000. Root cellars were never outlawed. They were quietly embarrassed out of middle-class life after 1955 as supermarket chains built out cold distribution networks and appliance makers finished the job. Dirt was reframed as unsophisticated. Every state agricultural extension service still publishes the instructions for free. A crate, some sand, 6 months of vegetables. That is not primitive. That is paid off. 14. The hurricane lamp. Brass base, glass chimney, cotton wick. The standard indoor light source in American homes from roughly 1860 until the Rural Electrification Act pushed the wire out to farm country in 1936. Trim the wick, fill the base, strike the match. 40 hours of steady, usable light per gallon of fuel. In the 1930s, a quality hurricane lamp ran $1.50 in a mail-order catalog, and kerosene was 10 cents a gallon. 40 hours of light for a dime. A comparable emergency lantern today runs $80 to $90 and burns specialty lamp oil at $12 a gallon. The electrification effort did not ban the lamp, but the utilities that followed made grid power seem so cheap and clean by comparison that the alternative went invisible. Federal Emergency Management still lists oil lamps as acceptable backup lighting. The relevant fire safety standards still give them a recognized safety rating. 200 years of reliable light still works tonight. 13. Save the beef fat off the roast. Simmer it in a pot with water. Skim the clean, solid fat off the top as it cools, remelt it slowly, and dip a length of cotton string 40 times, letting each coat harden between passes. You have made a candle. Your ancestors made 300 of them every fall without a second thought. A pound of fat that most people pour down the drain today makes 6 candles. 6 candles burning 3 hours each is 18 hours of light for no additional. A single beeswax candle at a grocery store currently runs around $8. This was never banned. Standard petroleum paraffin killed it after 1867 when it became cheap and uniform, and rural electrification finished the job. The National Park Service still demonstrates the exact method at historical living programs: fat, string, fire. The raw material is probably in your kitchen right now. 12. Keeping the fire alive without striking a match in the morning. At the end of the evening, rake your wood stove coals to the center. Lay one green or unseasoned log across the top. Shovel 2 inches of ash over the whole pile. Close the damper most of the way. In the morning, sweep the ash aside and you will find the coals still glowing red underneath. Add kindling directly. No cold start, no matches, no newspaper. Cold starting a stove uses significantly more wood than bringing a banked fire back to life. Over a full winter, banking consistently saved a household roughly a quarter cord of wood. That was real money then, and it is real money now. Modern certified stove manuals tend to discourage banking, citing particulate emissions during the slow burn phase that manufacturers do not want attached to their efficiency certifications. Agricultural extension programs still publish the method: ash over ember, wake up warm, never a cold start. 11. This is the one that was illegal. In 1932, in New Mexico, a simple roof-to-downspout diverter fed rainwater into a galvanized storage barrel beside an adobe house. The first flow off the roof after a dry spell flushed to the garden to clear any debris. Everything after that went into the cistern. When grid power failed and the electric well pump went silent, the family bucketed rainwater into the kitchen for a week without missing a meal or going thirsty. A barrel and gutter diverter setup in 1930 ran about $5. A modern rainwater harvesting system with proper filtration runs $600 to $2,000. And here is the part I promised you earlier. Until 2009, the state of Colorado made it illegal to collect rainfall off your own roof. A state Senate bill that year legalized it, partially. 8 Western states restricted residential rainwater collection well into the 2010s. The reason was prior appropriation water law. Irrigation districts and municipal utilities held legal claims on that water, and those claims were worth more if you could not touch a drop. Every one of those states now acknowledges that rooftop collection is safe for non-drinking use. Your roof, your rain, and it took 100 years for the law to admit it. Here is something worth pausing on. If you spent $2,000 on a solar generator last year, do not feel foolish. Half the country did the same thing. The marketing is very good. The point tonight is not that modern gear is useless. The point is you never needed most of it to begin with. 10. The tuna can stove. Wind a strip of corrugated cardboard into a tight spiral until it fills the inside of an empty tuna can. Pour melted candle wax over the top until the cardboard is saturated and the surface is level. Let it harden. Light the outer edge. That setup will boil a mug of water in roughly 6 minutes and burn for close to 90 minutes. Your total material cost is whatever the tuna cost you. The modern camping equivalent is a high-end compact stove at $150, plus sealed fuel canisters at $7 each. Nobody outlawed the tuna can stove. Scout programs taught it widely from the 1920s through the mid-1980s until liability attorneys rewrote the activity guides and it quietly vanished from the handbook. Wax and cardboard generate no retail margin. University outdoor education programs in several northern states still teach it as a legitimate emergency cooking technique. 1 can, some cardboard, old wax, 90 minutes of controlled fire. 9. Soap from ash and fat. Your ancestors poured collected rainwater slowly through a barrel packed with hardwood ash. The dark brown liquid that dripped out the bottom was lye. They combined that lye with saved cooking fat, boiled the mixture down until it thickened and pulled away from the sides of the pot, poured it into a wooden form, waited a day, and cut it into bars. 1 afternoon of work produced a year's worth of functional cleaning soap. Cost was effectively nothing. Ash came from the stove, fat was kitchen scrap. A handmade tallow soap bar at a farmer's market today runs $10 to $12. This was never illegal. A national soap brand launched in 1879 with a massive marketing campaign that made homemade soap seem old-fashioned and unreliable, and detergent brands after 1946 finished the transition. Federal agricultural extension bulletins still publish the full method with updated safety notes. Ash, Water, fat, clean laundry. The ingredients are free. The knowledge was just made to feel unnecessary. 8. The envelope system. And this one is about money, not fire or food. In February of 1933 in Youngstown, Ohio, a laid-off steelworker sat at his kitchen table under a kerosene lamp and divided his last $18 into 6 paper envelopes: rent, coal, groceries, milk, church, medical emergency. When an envelope was empty, the spending in that category stopped. Full stop. No exceptions. $18 a week was the median household income that year, and that system, run by families across the country, kept an estimated 200,000 American households out of eviction during the worst years of the Depression. Nobody passed a law against cash envelopes. Consumer credit cards arrived in 1950, and household revolving debt arrived with them. The credit industry earns an average of 24% annually from American households because an envelope physically stops when it is empty and a credit line does not. Every certified financial planner still recommends a version of this for households trying to eliminate debt. The relevant federal banking regulator published it in a consumer guide as recently as 2020. 6 envelopes, 1 lamp, no interest ever. Here's the pattern worth noticing. Every single one of these tricks functions without electricity. That is not a coincidence. A person who is never fully dependent on the grid is not afraid when the grid fails. The blackout is only a crisis if you forgot how to live for a few days without it. 7. Look at your kitchen pantry right now. If you have a standard can of vegetable shortening sitting in there, the kind most people buy for baking, you are holding a 45-hour emergency lamp and you do not know it. Push a length of cotton kitchen string down through the center of the shortening, leaving about an inch of wick above the surface. Bend the top of the wick over so it soaks into the fat. Give it a few minutes. Light it. That single can will burn steady, nearly smokeless for 45 hours. 6 cans like the man in Ashland used in 1936 gives you 270 hours of light for around $18 in today's prices. A comparable emergency solar lantern retails for $400. The shortening brand was launched in 1911 and spent 60 years in advertising convincing you it belonged strictly in pie crust. The relevant Federal Emergency Preparedness website currently advises people not to use candles during power outages, so the shortening lamp stays invisible. Any independent burn test will confirm the 45-hour figure. 270 hours on a shelf you already own. 6. A shallow metal dish, a sardine tin, a small cast iron pan, anything that holds a ½ inch of solid cooking grease. Lay a twisted strip of cotton cloth in it with one end draped over the rim. Light the end. It will burn for 6 hours off a small amount of fat. The grease you might otherwise pour down the drain after cooking. 6 hours of workable light for nothing. And here is something personal. I lit my first one of these at 11 years old in my mother's kitchen, set it too close to the curtain, burned a hole the size of a coffee cup before my grandfather came in with a wet towel. He did not raise his voice. He said, "Now you know why it stays on the stovetop." Every volume of the Foxfire book series documents this method. The Smithsonian Folklife Archive holds photographs of working examples. A safety inspector today would warn you about it, and they would not be wrong to do so. Keep it on the stovetop, away from anything flammable. Grease, cloth, fire, and one lesson you only learn once. 5. When the power dies in January, step outside. Fill a metal bucket with clean snow. Put your milk, your butter, and any sealed leftover containers down into it. Set a second bucket or a board over the top. Place it on the north side of the house where direct sun will not reach it. It will hold below 32 degrees for as long as the snow lasts. The 1940 census recorded that nearly 30% of American homes still had no mechanical refrigeration at all. Those families ate. They did not lose food. A whole house backup generator capable of running one refrigerator through a 2-day outage costs around $2,400 installed. The refrigerator as a household standard was pushed aggressively by a major automaker-owned appliance brand starting in 1919. Within 40 years, the icebox was considered embarrassing. The Federal Food Safety Inspection Service still publishes the 40-degree rule for outage food safety. Packed snow on the north side of the house meets that rule without any machinery at all. Snow, bucket, north wall. Butter still cold in the morning.
4. The reason a family that lived through the Depression never truly ran out of anything was not stockpiling in the panicked sense of the word, it was deep pantry rotation. 50 pounds of flour, 50 pounds of dried beans, 20 pounds of salt, 10 pounds of sugar, 5 gallons of cooking oil, a case each of canned tomatoes and canned milk, stored in the coolest corner of the house and eaten in strict rotation, oldest items first, constantly replenished. 2 years of cushion sitting quietly on a shelf. In 1935, assembling that full pantry cost roughly $11. The modern equivalent in today's prices runs around $300. A branded freeze-dried one-year emergency food bucket from a preparedness retailer runs over $2,000. Deep pantry storage was never outlawed. It was quietly made to feel unnecessary by just-in-time supermarket supply chains after 1955. A customer with 2 years of staples on a shelf is a customer who misses dozens of weekly shopping trips. Every agricultural extension service in the country still publishes deep pantry planning guides at no cost. $11, 2 years of dinners. That is not extreme preparation. That is just how things used to be done. 3. The Smithsonian completed a folklife study in 1979 documenting a family in Cherry County, Nebraska, who from October of 1934 through April of 1935 fed themselves entirely from a root cellar dug beside the kitchen door. Potatoes, cabbage, turnips, apples, salt pork, home-canned tomatoes, dried corn. 6 months, not one grocery trip, not one refrigerator running, not one power outage that touched their food supply in any meaningful way. The cellar measured 14 feet by 14 feet. It cost $31 to build in 1932. The modern climate-controlled root cellar appliance currently retails for around $2,400. This method was never outlawed. The post-war suburb killed it. Lots got smaller, basements got shallower. Building codes of the 1950s and 60s were quietly written in ways that made excavated earthen storage rooms difficult or impossible to permit. Every state agricultural extension still publishes cellar construction plans free of charge. 14 by 14 feet, 6 months of food for one family. One winter survived without a single trip to the store. 2. On the coldest nights when the fire burned low and the bedroom dropped to 50 degrees, the answer was a smooth river stone placed on top of the wood stove after supper. By bedtime, that stone had absorbed enough heat to read around 140 degrees. Wrapped tightly in a wool sock and tucked at the foot of the bed, it radiated warmth steadily until roughly 4 in the morning. Cost is 1 rock, which is free. A modern electric heated blanket runs around $40 and requires a working outlet, which is the one thing you do not have when the grid goes down. This was never banned or outlawed. Central heating after the 1950s made it unnecessary for most households, and the electric blanket launched by a major appliance brand in 1946 gave it the final push out the door. Basic thermodynamic calculation confirms it. A 15-pound stone at 140 degrees stores roughly the same usable warmth as a heated blanket running for 4 hours. Physics requires no subscription. 1 rock, 1 sock, warm feet until almost dawn. And that brings us to 1. And I want to be clear with you. Number 1 is not a trick. It never was. Number 1 is what every single item on this list was pointing toward all along. The man in Ashland, Kentucky in 1936 was not afraid of the dark when that ice storm came through and took the power lines with it. He lit 6 cans of shortening. He sat down. He waited it out. He was not surviving. He was not in crisis mode. He was not scrambling. He was sovereign. The grid was a convenience he appreciated but had never fully depended on. His pantry held 2 years. His cellar held 6 months. His stove held heat through the night without a match. His wife had filled the tub before the first gust hit. When the power failed, nothing in that house failed alongside it. He lived in that same house until 1971. He was 83 years old when he died. His grandson still owns the property. 4 of the original 6 shortening cans still sit on a shelf in the pantry, ready the way he kept everything. That is the whole thing. Every trick on this list is one more brick in that wall. Not a wall built out of fear. A wall built out of knowing. Knowing that the lights will probably come back on tomorrow. Knowing that if they do not, you are still fine. The blackout is coming for all of us at some point, an hour, a day, a week. The question is never whether the grid holds.
The question is whether you still remember how to live without it for a while. That man did. So can you. I am not here tonight to sell you fear. I do not want you sitting in the dark with a sick feeling in your stomach. The lights will come back on tomorrow. They almost certainly will. What I want for you is the particular peace that comes from not caring quite so much whether they do. So pick one, just one thing this week. Do not try to do all 20 at once. Nobody does 20 in a week. Push a length of cotton string into a can of shortening tonight and know that your kitchen has a working lamp sitting right there. Or fill the bathtub the next time you hear a storm warning, or write 6 envelopes on Sunday morning. Rent, groceries, fuel or heat, savings, emergency, and one for whatever comes up unexpected. Put cash in them, or set a smooth rock on top of the stove after supper tonight. Wrap it in a wool sock and tuck it at the foot of the bed. Pick the one that feels easiest. Do that one. I ran the shortening lamp myself last February on a night the ice took our line down for 11 hours. 1 can, 41 hours of burn time still remaining when the power came back. $18. That is all. Tell me down below which one of these did your grandparents actually do. The answer that gets the most replies is the one I will build the next video around. Your family remembered all of this. Now it is yours again. If this is the kind of thing you want to see more of, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. We are pulling buried practical knowledge back into the daylight, one lost trick at a time, and that work matters. Next time we go into the pantry, there is a $2 staple your great-grandmother kept in a mason jar on the top shelf that put an entire industry out of business in the 1920s. I will show you why she kept 3 jars of it and why the commercial operation it replaced went bankrupt in 1928. That one is coming next. If you want to be there when it goes up, subscribe now. Keep the old ways.